All right, let's begin. Again, our focus this morning is business and technology trends, and I'm going to begin first with a question for Justin Kelley from Impact Technology. And Justin, tell us, what should businesses or organizations be doing now with technology to compete successfully, whether it's 1 year or looking down the road to 5 years, even 10 years?
Well, thanks, Steve. One of the things that I think is really important is there's not just one thing that you need to do, there's a lot of different things, especially when you think about in the next year, maybe even 5 to 10 years looking out. One of the biggest things I think everybody should think about is IT is no longer a cost center, something that just costs you money. It's more of a strategic enabler. You need to look at IT and technology as a way to set you apart from your competition and gain that competitive advantage. So looking at IT as a strategic enabler and how it can help you fund initiatives and actually meet those initiatives to give you a competitive advantage is really important. So that's one of the biggest things I think is probably the best thing looking at a business standpoint or your organization is how can you look for those initiatives you're looking for and help technology and IT help you do that. The other thing I think you guys is probably really important to look at in the future is there's a lot of different things that are moving and changing. IT has matured as an industry, so as technology, it's matured. It's a now stable platform in business. It's there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's here to stay. So with that, how can you use it to your advantage to gain that competitive advantage? One of the biggest things I think is probably on everybody's mind is what does the cloud mean to you and how can that help you? You probably all heard about it and what it does and what it means to you. Most of you are probably using the cloud now in some capacity in your business, if not all. So thinking in your business or your organization, what can I use the cloud for? What parts of my business and what parts of my infrastructure can I move to the cloud are really important. There's also the mindset that moving away from infrastructure costs and buying that computer, buying that server, those were traditional costs in the past that were a lot of capital outlay. They required a lot of money up front. With the cloud, that cost goes away initially. You can now say, hey, it's a monthly basis type initiative. It's a subscription-based thing that you can now convert to an operational expense versus a capital expense. So that's one of the things you have to consider as well is, hey, how can I use the cloud to leverage greater efficiencies in my business and also go to market faster with my ideas or whatever that thing that you're trying to start with. The other thing I'd like to bring up is that there's this new model of bring your own device, or BYOD is what they call it. More and more I see in businesses today that people want to bring their own laptops, their own computers, work from home, whatever it might be, tablets, iPhones, your latest gadget that you have. You want to be able to access your data from anywhere, anytime, any place. So struggling with that, you have to think about your corporate policies and how you're going to access the data, because back in the day, last few years, even today, you can only talk to your network or your computers with your own device that's company provided. Now the initiative is, hey, bring your own device and get to my data anywhere I want. The mobile workforce is here to stay. People want to work from home and get to that, their network resources, their devices, their data, their email, whatever it might be. They want to be able to get to it anywhere, anytime, any place. So struggling with that, writing new policies on how you access the stuff is very important, and also something you guys need to deal with, because it will be here and it will only get worse. The more people I see, most people have 3 to 4 devices or more that they access data from. I'm one of those. I have 5 or 6 devices I access my data from at all times. I want it to work all the time. So keeping that in mind is really important, and knowing that's going to be here. So your workforce is going to want that, and it's going to demand that as you go forward. Another thing I want you guys to think about is security. With the recent Target breach and stuff, the data is a top concern, and the security of that data. Consumers and our customers demand that we take care of the data and their personal information. So it's very, very important that you keep that in mind, because that is the utmost concern to your consumers, your clients, your customers, and us holding that, and safety is very, very important. It's paramount. Security will only become a bigger and bigger concern as this digital world unfolds and gets bigger and bigger. So those are just 3 or 4 general initiatives I would think are very, very important.
You answered the one question I had right out of the gate as you talk about the cloud. It's become part of our lexicon now, and years ago, not that long ago, we were all concerned about security,
right.
but there have been dramatic improvements in security when it comes to the cloud.
And I tell a lot of clients this, that the security is only as good as you make it, whether it's in your own internal organization or which outfit you pick in the cloud. Security is always a big concern, and what data you put where. So with security being one of the top priorities for all businesses and even your clients, make sure you pick a good cloud provider or have a great internal infrastructure that provides security. Your data and your network's only as safe as you make it, and how much you invest into that and actually oversee it and try to meet those compliance guidelines and regulatory guidance.
Okay. Justin, thank you. Donna Abbott from Ocean City, Ocean City, a long-time popular tourist destination. Let's talk about the opportunities to continue to attract new visitors to the resort town.
Well, Steve, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here today. The new trends, I guess, in attracting tourism we're seeing, obviously we're still going to market Ocean City as a summer destination. That's when their core business is brought in. But, you know, in recent years, we're seeing some regional opportunities. Last year, our Tourism Advisory Board contributed funds to bring the Triple USA Girls World Series Softball, which has been coming to Salisbury and Wicomico County for a number of years now. And we've seen some spillover effect from the teams that are coming here and participating in Wicomico County and staying in Ocean City to some extent. So this past year, we partnered with Wicomico County, the Recreation and Parks and Tourism Department. We had an opening ceremony on our beach, brought down a lot of the teams, and we're looking to do more of that. We see sports, amateur sports, as a regional opportunity and something that I think Wicomico County certainly and Ocean City and hopefully Worcester County will all hopefully be involved in moving forward, because you know the typical family vacation has changed over years. People are not taking that full week off, and if they are, they're planning it around their kids' sporting events and other opportunities. So we see that as a pretty important component coming forward with our tourism marketing.
Have you been able to get well, actually, I'm sure you have, a good sense of how your advertising campaign regionally throughout the Northeast and where else you've been advertising is paying dividends?
Oh yes, absolutely. We started a new metrics reporting system back in May to start looking at a lot of different numbers to see what where we're seeing things and where we're reaching out. We have key feeder markets: Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, Central Pennsylvania have long been our marketing areas, but this year we added Pittsburgh. We hadn't been in that market for a while, and we added it. We figured strategically they're not going to come just for a weekend. They're going to travel a longer distance and stay a longer time. So we are seeing results in our metrics reporting, and we track our website visits, we track our social media, our Facebook, which is our Facebook page is now approaching 700,000 friends,
wow,
which is pretty considerable. So that's a way for us to keep in touch with all of our fans and friends on a daily basis, for that matter.
Okay. Georgia Nichols from Integra Realty Resources. Let's talk about real estate development activity and trends that you're seeing on the Eastern Shore.
Well, I think one of the best ways to look at a real estate market and figure out whether or not it's recovering is to look for signs of new construction, because that's typically an expanding market. So that's what I'm going to talk about, are various new construction projects, planning projects on the Eastern Shore that are going on right now. And I'll start with the residential market, because that's the one everyone's concerned about. Generally, we're seeing improving markets throughout any areas we've looked at on the Eastern Shore. At the very least, there's more sales activity, and then if the activity is strong enough to reduce the inventories to a reasonable level, then we're seeing gradual price increases. And one of the most promising trends is that we're actually seeing some new subdivisions begin to move forward, primarily in eastern Sussex County. We're seeing developers once again acquiring multi-million-dollar sites. I've seen a couple of like $6 to $8 million land sales over the past 60 days. Banks are loaning on infrastructure again, and developments are moving forward. So that seems like a very promising sign. The apartment sector, that's the sector that is typically described as basically what led us out of the recession, sort of leading the recovery. And that's certainly true in Salisbury, where we have a few apartment complexes under construction. There's the Ocean Isle project at Beagle and Park Drive and Old Ocean City Road. I think that's going to be about 140 units. That's a Rainier project where they've started the site work. Addison Court is under construction next to Target in North Salisbury. And I think that's about 300 units, and those buildings are going up. And I think that includes a small retail component. The interesting thing about that project is I believe it's going to be the first apartment complex in Salisbury to feature elevators in some of the buildings. There's an expansion at Marley Manor, an additional 30 or 40 units going on there. There's talk of the River's Edge condominium project along the river that was partially built and then abandoned by the developer years ago. That may become low-income housing. There are also a couple of apartment complexes underway in the Lewis area, Hunter's Walk and Sandbar Village, and interestingly enough, these are probably going to be the first 2 market-rate apartment complexes in Sussex County of any size. And there's another project potentially proposed for Seahawk Road in Berlin across from Stephen Decatur High School. In the retail sector, we have lots of small projects going up. In particular, we're probably going to have a Dollar General on every corner pretty soon. And I think there are even more Dollar Generals to come. In Salisbury, we have a small strip center under construction next to Barnes & Noble, and a Dunkin' Donuts being constructed out in front of Sam's. And a lot of development in and around the college. The college is such an economic driver. It's nice to see things that people are excited about, things like Planet Fitness and Jersey Mike's. Another prime retail area is the Waterside Village project in Easton. That's the shopping center that's anchored by Target. If you're not familiar with it, it's really one of the prettiest shopping centers we have on the Eastern Shore. And they're talking about adding another 200,000 square feet of space that could potentially include a Dick's Sporting Goods and a Harris Teeter grocery store. There's also potentially some multifamily units planned for that project. The Shops at College Park, which is the Georgetown development at the intersection of 404 or Route 18 and 113. They have a Redner's grocery store under construction that is supposed to open maybe in April of this year. And there are a couple more pad sites planned for that project. I think maybe probably a fast food restaurant and potentially a bank pad. And eventually they may also add in a couple of years a 90-room hotel, possibly a Hilton or a Marriott chain. In Berlin, we have the Walmart and Home Depot on Route 50, and there's a small strip center under construction in front of the Walmart, and some restaurant pads potentially being developed there. And there's a new shopping center next door, typically referred to as Ocean Landing 2, that they may end up starting construction on that this year. They've been working on the site work for what seems like an eternity, but that shopping center may come to fruition. And I think that Berlin corridor is an area that's sort of primed for development over the next few years, whether it happens in and around the Walmart, Home Depot, or whether it happens farther down near the town of Berlin at Seahawk Road across from the school. There's a small retail project called Rehoboth Gateway that they should break ground this year on that, and it's located on Route 1 in between Jungle Gyms and County Bank. And they're talking about 3 pad sites there, one potentially designed for a convenience store, and then a couple of restaurant pads, potentially a hotel and a retail strip center there. The lodging market, which is kind of the next sector I'll touch on, that, especially in the resort areas, that's a market that has done particularly well. We have the new Hyatt Place at Ruddertown. There's a Fairfield Inn and Suites under construction in Rehoboth, and another one eventually planned for Easton. We have a Microtel under construction in Georgetown that's supposed to open this summer. The Ocean Voyager Motel at 32nd Street in Ocean City has been redeveloped into La Quinta Inn and Suites. And then there's another project in planning in Ocean City on the former Misty Harbor site at 25th Street that has the potential to include a hotel, some restaurant pads, and a small condominium project. Most of the office development that we see on the shore seems to be geared toward medical office. There is one exception that I can think of, which is the new Lingo office going up in Rehoboth, which is a very nice Class A 20,000 square foot office building. There's, as far as the medical projects that I'm aware of, there's the College Park Medical Pavilion at Georgetown, which is potentially 37,000 square feet, which should be finished this fall, and is primarily going to be occupied by BB Medical Center. The Easton Medical Project, again at Waterside Village, which is that Target anchored shopping center, over 40,000 square feet there, and then a medical project near the Ocean Pines North Gate, which potentially include 10,000 square feet in the first phase. And then last but not least, in the industrial sector, We have the Dorchester Regional Technology Park at Cambridge. They're doing an innovation crossroad building at a cost of roughly $2.2 million, funded by the Maryland Technology Development Corporation and the state of Maryland. Of course, the Wallops Research Park that everyone is pretty excited about, adjacent to the NASA facility. That's an $8 million park, and I think they're going to break ground this year and potentially have it complete by the end of 2015. There's a building plan for the Somerset Aerospace Park, 50,000 square feet industrial spec building. And then potentially there's talk of taking what was formerly the Vlasic Pickle Factory in Millsboro and redevelop that into a chicken processing plant at a cost of $100 million, which is hard to even imagine. But it was really interesting when I started thinking that this was the kind of thing that I would talk about today. I never dreamt that I could come up with this much stuff going on the Eastern Shore in a very short time period, and it's purely a snapshot. I mean, there's so much, I'm sure there's so many more projects that I'm not even aware of. It seems like a very encouraging sign for our local real estate market.
All right, that's quite the list.
It is, really.
Thank you. To Mike Robbins now from the Maryland Hospital Association. In the news this week, the state has just signed this new agreement with the federal government regarding Maryland's unique hospital payment system. Let's talk about how this new system is going to impact employer health care spending over the next few years.
Sure. Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for having me back again this year. For many of you who may not be familiar, for the past 36 years, Maryland hospitals have had a unique contract with the federal government that governs how Medicare and Medicaid are paid here in the state of Maryland. That contract is one of a kind. We're the only state in the nation that still has this agreement. And under that agreement, there had been some requirements for controlling hospital spending, but it was focused just on what was happening on the inpatient setting for Medicare patients, focused really on just inpatient care in our hospitals. This new agreement that we just announced last Friday takes our waiver to a whole greater length and will have, I think, some very significant impacts for employers. First and foremost, under our old agreement, there was no limit on the total growth in healthcare spending. We just looked at unit costs and controlled the unit rate of growth. Under this new agreement, Maryland's hospitals, starting January 1st of this year, have agreed to control their total spending, not just for Medicare, but for all hospital services, to no more than what has been the growth in the state's economy over the last 10 years, or roughly 3.6%. That's well below what the historical average in hospital spending has been. So the first and most obvious benefit to the employer community is that there will be a cap on hospital spending, and as you probably well know from your own health care bills as an employer, hospital spending is probably the greatest share of that spending. 40% or more of your health insurance premium is built around the medical costs in hospitals. So we have set a cap on that on an annual basis. You might then want to ask your health insurance company going forward, if you're seeing health insurance premiums growing 7, 8, 9, 10%, why that might be if hospital costs are now committed to grow no more than 3.6% a year over the next several years, which is the historical growth in the state's economy. More importantly, as part of this agreement, Maryland's hospitals have now also committed to a series of quality improvements in their hospitals. Under the old agreement, it was all about controlling Medicare spending. Under this new agreement, we're going to be committed to reducing the rates of readmissions to Maryland's hospitals. You shouldn't be coming back after an initial admission. We should find the right resources in your community to take care of you outside the community, to coordinate your care in a better way. We want to reduce the rates of those readmissions to Maryland's hospitals. Second, there's an unacceptable rate of complications. Once patients come into the hospitals, we want to reduce those rates as well. So within the four walls of the hospital, there's now tremendous incentives to provide employers value for their healthcare dollar by focusing on not just the quantity of services provided, but the quality of those services. And finally, there are also tremendous incentives to do this right and to be successful. We have to do a much better job of engaging with our community-based providers, physicians, skilled nursing facilities, home health care agencies, on how we coordinate care, how we hand off patients once they leave the hospital and make sure they get the right services out in the community. We'll be making new investments in infrastructure to ensure we have the right information, that we're sharing the right information with all of our community partners. What you're going to be seeing from Maryland's hospitals, it will not be your old grandmother's Blue H. It's a new role for Maryland's hospitals, a more engaged community partner, and one which, because of these caps on costs and these commitments to quality, will help to control the health care costs for the employers, but also provide you with a more healthy and productive workforce, because we're going to make sure that once we treat them in the hospital, we provide the right resources out in the community so they get back to work quicker. We avoid future hospitalizations so that your health care expense goes down and you have fewer sick days, a healthier workforce.
All right. Justin, we'll come back to you. Let's talk about the economic and social effects that you see technology having on business looking forward over the next 3 to 10 years.
I guess the first thing to define is what are tomorrow's technologies and what is coming down the pipe for business and what we're seeing now. We're starting to see it now with things like Google's eyeglasses now that can basically wear a set of eyeglasses and you can see information and at any time. The watch now that you can wear, it's like a cell phone. So what that's bringing to the business world and also to the consumer world as well is what they call these Internet of Things. I don't know if you guys ever heard that term before, but the Internet of Things is pretty much meaning that, hey, the Internet is no longer just computers anymore or tablets anymore. Pretty much everything in the coming years is going to be on the Internet and connected in some way, shape, or form. This includes things in your home, your refrigerator, your house. Smart homes are now upon us, but it's just going to get more and more and more involved with everything being connected. I think there's, 70 billion devices on the Internet now worldwide, and that's only expected to probably quadruple in the next 10 to 15 years. So with that, that includes your things in your home, things you'd never think could be on the Internet, cameras, your washing machine, your refrigerator, everything you can think of will be on the Internet. And that's all part of trying to be controlled so that you can be on a smartphone or any other type of device and actually talk to your devices, talk to your home, talk to anything that's connected by these Internet of Things and be able to have access to it and gather data from it and have access and do what you need to do with it. So that's one of the technologies for tomorrow. Another thing is artificial intelligence. It was one of them sci-fi things you heard about in the movies or in the past, but it's here. I don't know if you've ever watched Jeopardy and seen the Watson computer that actually can compete on the same level and sometimes beat real human contestants. It is here and it is actually doing jobs in the real world. So when you look at artificial intelligence and what it's going to be doing in the future, we all know about manufacturing, how automation and robotics and things like that are doing jobs that replace humans. That is going to be more and more prevalent in the coming years because we're going to have typical blue-collar workforce that was replaced back in the days by robotics. You're going to start seeing white-collar workers and knowledge-based workers being replaced by automated tools or smart machines. So that's something to think about because as workers get displaced and they find that there's computers doing their jobs because they have artificial intelligence, they're capable of doing things and making decisions for us, it's going to start displacing workers, and that could cause social unrest in our economy. And if you have computers and all these things, Internet of Things, doing more and more of the jobs in the business world, you're going to start seeing some social unrest, more economic disparity between classes of people because of the technology that's coming upon us. They're predicting by 2020 you're going to start seeing this very, very soon. I saw statistics the other day that 10% of computers now are now learning instead of processing data. What does that mean? Computers are watching what we do. They're learning our habits. They're taking data in and they're seeing, hey, what is going on with what we do, processing the data and feeding that information to government, corporations and stuff like that and saying, hey, what can I use with that data to sell more services or gather things about you to monitor, maintain, things like that. So thinking about that, it's kind of a scary thought, but it's also very empowering for businesses and people that can use that data to deliver services that consumers demand. So that's another technology that's coming down the pipe. 3D printing. I don't know if you guys ever heard of 3D printers. It's scary in the sense that you can now pretty much print anything in a 3D model and it looks and feels like the exact same thing. From a business standpoint, that can be scary for intellectual property, copyright protection. So that's something to consider when you have intellectual property or copyright, trademark, patents, whatever it might be in the United States, and a 3D printer, a $2,000 to $5,000 printer can print the exact same replica of your prototype and go overseas and sell, and you would never know the difference. Something to think about, because that's going to be very, very important as that debate's being more, it's going to be debated on the government level and the local level. Hey, what do I need to do to protect my assets and my property? And the last thing is back to the cloud again. I think it's in a technology that's already here, but I think the cloud is going to start driving costs down and making it more user-focused instead of thinking about, hey, what are the expenditures I have to make in my business for these devices and that platform or that system? How much money does it cost me on a per unit scale for that user or that employee? So the cloud, I think, is going to be one of those things that helps drive some of those costs down, but you're just going to try to figure out more ways in business as well to deliver more services to that user.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Donna, Abbott, question for you. In what ways are Ocean City and Salisbury connected regarding the business of tourism?
The business of tourism, well, I mentioned the sports marketing, but I would like to say that one thing that, and probably the Daily Times already tipped it off in yesterday's article about this event today, but we've been doing, as I mentioned earlier, our metrics report that we just started doing. We're looking at different categories. And so for the month of August, we wanted to look at the top markets coming to our website, ococean.com. And I expected to see the ones where we market Ocean City to, but jumping up in number 5 after Washington, Philadelphia, New York, and Baltimore was Salisbury. And that really just, nothing against Salisbury, really, I love you all. But we don't, the bulk of our marketing dollars go outside of this area to bring people to the region. And, I questioned that figure. I thought, why is Salisbury number 5? And what we found was these were people who were already in Ocean City, and they were on their tablets or their mobile devices, and they were looking up things to do and places to go and restaurants and all of that. So, it had been on our radar to develop a mobile website. We've had some prioritizing we've had to do in our technology budget. We just recently migrated to a new content management system, which we needed to be able to do some other things that we wanted to do, like the mobile website. But that just sealed the deal for me when I saw that figure in the month of August, one of our busiest months, to see Salisbury at number 5. And it's pinging through the tower, if you will. I'm not the technology guru, but maybe Justin could I guess when he's talking about the different technologies, it's probably not a trend. We probably should have had that mobile website before now, but we're moving forward with it. We're actually going to develop one that will show you different things if you are in Ocean City or if you are somewhere else. Meaning if you're looking for a hotel room, typically you're not in town yet, it'll be structured a little bit differently, but the computer will be able to tell where you are and where you're coming in, and then that's what the different mobile site that you will see. So we're very excited about that. We're also seeing we've been doing mobile apps for a number of years now in both the iPhone and the Android, and our mobile app year to date last year in August was up 33.5%. So people were downloading our app to get information about Ocean City. So just another part of the technology that we're seeing and using to market to our tourism people that we want here. The other thing, phone calls. We track our toll-free phone calls. They're going down. People are not picking up the phone and calling an 800 number. I mean, the phone calls were down in August 31% over the previous August. But yet, mobile apps are up. So obviously technology is driving where people and how people are getting their information.
Thank you. Mike Robbins from the Maryland Hospital Association. What concrete steps will hospitals take to control spending, and how might this affect the patient experience?
Great question. First, there are some pretty important steps hospitals have already been taking over the last couple of years. A number of collaborative efforts working with hospitals and other providers in their community to reduce rates of readmissions. That's unacceptably high. In fact, Maryland's hospitals have probably just about the highest rate of readmissions, patients coming back into the hospital after 30 days of their initial admission, than any state in the country. So there are a number of activities we're working on, getting providers, caregivers, coordinating with skilled nursing facilities, making sure if a patient is transferred out that we track and monitor what's happening in the skilled nursing facility, recruiting primary care resources in the community to make sure that that patient has a consistent and stable primary care home to go to after they've been discharged from the hospital. Reducing rates of complications. Those are all things which should improve the experience of care for the patient. The other thing that will be happening under this new waiver is a tremendous amount of monitoring by both the federal government and the state agencies involved with this new waiver, including our State Rate Setting Commission. One of the things they will be doing is actually surveying the patient experience of care. They do that now. We'll continue to monitor that closely so that as we look for finding ways to get the patient to the right source of care at the right time in the right place with the right resources, that we actually enhance their experience of care. And that does not necessarily mean they have to come to the hospital to get that best experience of care.
All right, thank you. Two questions for you, Justin, similar in scope. The first, what about broadband to lower shore residents? And then in reference to the Internet of Things, what is the state of our infrastructure? Can we handle all of this increasing traffic?
So for the first question, I work with Maryland Broadband Cooperative based out of Salisbury, and it is a slow but tedious process, but we are seeing more and more efforts from local and the state and organizations with funding to actually get broadband into the lower counties. It is a slow process, like I said, but I do see it happening. They're laying more and more fiber down the highways. They're putting it where it needs to be in the more rural areas. But a side note with the broadband aspect is there's a lot of initiative to actually put WiMAX or Wi-Fi on cell phone towers. And it's been done in the northern counties. I see it a lot with clients there in the northern counties like Kent, Queen Anne's, and Caroline counties. It's there. It's working. It's not 100% here yet in the lower counties. I don't know why. I've seen some startups and some other companies try to start it, but I haven't seen anything actually come off the ground and actually operate. But the broadband will get here eventually. It almost has to, because there will be enough local pressure and to the governments to actually start funding this and putting the dollars out there to actually get the groundwork laid for it. We're still not like the metropolitan areas, but just for us to have 4G with cell phones is a miracle, in my opinion, sometimes, because I always expect the metropolitan areas to have it first for a year or two. But I was kind of surprised when I saw it come in 6 months to a year later. It was pretty quick getting to the shore. But for the broadband, it is getting here. It's a slow process, but it is getting here. And I see more and more places and other companies actually providing it, like Comcast, your Bay Broadbands, Atlantic Broadbands, and stuff like that. And for the second question, I do think that it will keep up. We are going to be able to handle the resources and things like that. There will always be some kind of demand for the resources and the expanded broadband coverage, and as well as the data processing that's going on. I think it will keep up. I think there will always be somebody out there willing to provide what is necessary to meet the demands of the consumers.
Okay, thank you. Georgia Nichols from Integra Realty Resources. Let's talk about technology and how it's changing the appraisal industry.
It's changed the appraisal industry pretty dramatically. I started appraising in the mid-1980s, and we didn't even have computers on our desk or use the internet or anything like that. We took 35-millimeter pictures, and our comparable sales came out of a book that was published 4 times a year, or a trip to the assessment office. So the changes are dramatic, and it's primarily related to the amount of information that's available to us in looking at these properties and in analyzing sales. Integra is a national company with approximately 900 appraisers all over the country, and we do more than 40,000 appraisals a year, and all the information from those appraisals goes into one central database that we all share. So for example, when we have an appraisal assignment on a unique property type like a movie theater, we can go into this database, and within 5 minutes we can pull sales of movie theaters all over the country, cap rates, expense ratios, lease rates, just an incredible amount of information in a very short period of time. The other big benefit that I've seen is in communication. And again, I go back to the fact that Integra is a national company. We can also call on these other 900 or so appraisers nationally for challenging, complex assignments and get some feedback from them as to whether they've ever had to address a similar type of appraisal or encountered similar properties or have any paired sale data or any additional sale data that doesn't show up in the databases. So I think those are the two biggest things. It's about the amount of information that's available at our fingertips and the enhanced communication.
Thank you. Justin, back to you. Statistics say that 1 in 3 homes in the U.S. are not connected to the internet. What do businesses need to do to continue serving those who are not online and probably will not be online anytime soon?
I don't know. I think the businesses will always have some aspect with the traditional media, like say print and phone and things like that, and TV, because everybody has a TV in their house, even more than one TV. So those will always be there, and there's always a need for that. With the internet, you're always going to see the people that don't have the direct broadband capabilities, but with the wireless from our cell phones and the carriers through that route, I always feel like there's going to be a way for those people that don't have internet directly in their home with a hard wire. They will have it in some other fashion, so they will get that service. So I don't think businesses have to worry about it that much. I think that trend will go down. You'll have more and more people that are connected, just not directly what that statistic is saying.
Okay. We're down to our final 5 minutes now. Mike Robbins, to you. Since Maryland has the highest hospital readmission rate in the country, what percentage of readmissions are the uninsured who know they can go to a hospital and receive free care?
I don't know offhand what percentage of our readmissions are for the uninsured. I do know overall the uninsured make up about 7% of the revenues in the average Maryland hospital. And we have a rather unique way of funding that's built into our rate setting system that's, again, one of a kind, which allows for that equal access for the uninsured. They can go into any hospital and be assured of being treated as a result of that unique way of funding that cost. Like any patient that comes to Maryland's hospitals, we're not going to treat that uninsured differently than any other patient, and how we're going to try to make sure that their rates of complications, their rates of readmissions are reduced, the services they provide are the highest level of quality, and more importantly, that when they get back out to the community, we try to identify for them, do they have a medical home, a place that they can go to receive a more stable and ongoing source of medical care, so we can avoid them coming back into the hospital emergency rooms if not necessary, avoid them coming back in for higher cost care if we can treat their ambulatory, their outpatient conditions before they become more serious. That is where the real emphasis will be. So we'll want to make sure that we provide a greater level of access to primary care than we've been providing historically.
All right, thank you. Winding down now, Georgia, are you seeing appraisals come in above or below tax assessments?
Well, that's a tough question. I personally do a lot of Sussex County, Delaware work, and they always come in above the tax assessments because they're based on 1974 values. Honestly, you see it both ways. You see some properties that come in lower, some properties that come in higher. There are some property owners who have obviously appealed their assessment, and their assessment is low compared to the tax comparables that we look at. Then there are other property owners who have just sort of let their assessment be, and it's gotten a little too high. So it's really a mixed bag.
Okay. And Mike, one final question for you, back to sort of the readmission topic. Is there a correlation between discharging patients quickly from hospitals and then subsequent complications and readmissions? Will hospitals be keeping patients just a little bit longer?
That's a great question. And one of the possible outcomes of providing this better and more well-coordinated care is that we want to make sure that before we discharge the patient, that number one, they're ready to go home or to their other source of care for transferring them to skilled nursing care, understanding their discharge instructions. That may take a little bit more time to make sure they understand that, but more importantly, to make sure that if they're going back home, that they have the resources in the home care setting to make sure that they have the follow-up care that they need to avoid those readmissions or coming back in with other complications of care. So to make sure that's all done, there is the possibility we might see that initial stay grow in terms of its length of stay in the hospital. But again, ultimately, there are going to be a lot of incentives for us to make sure that the patient is receiving the right care before they even come into the hospital, to make sure that there are a whole range of avoidable utilization in the hospital setting, that if we have the right care out in the community and improve that care and provide greater access to that care, that hopefully they won't need to be coming into the hospital for many of the avoidable utilization that they do now.
Okay, thank you. That wraps up this discussion. Round of applause for our panel. Thank you.